They are really the life's blood of the whole spirit of the community. So please definitely do support them. So can we get lights off? It might be a little easier to see some. This is bright, but we have to set the mood. All right, much better, much better. All right, so the perfect cure for cabin fever is some nice spooky stories. So this isn't anything I planned on doing with my life. You know, lives take you in very strange directions. I actually started, I was a chemistry student. I worked as a research scientist for a medical diagnostics company. And over 20 years ago, they were closing the lab. So I said, maybe I should start writing. And I thought I'd write history, science. I somehow got into ghosts and ancient stone sites and you name it. So I just have a blast doing what I'm doing. And I hope that enthusiasm will come through. As I said, ghosts were nothing I thought I would ever do. I now have the Ghost Investigator series. I'm working on volume 14 because there is no lack of spooky stories for this area. I also have a tour book, Hudson Valley Haunts, because the number one question I'm asked is, can I go with you on a ghost hunt? And the number one answer is no. If I let everybody go, there would be 43 people in a 2-bedroom house and we wouldn't know what was going on. So these are places open to the public. I give you the history, the background, and whatever haunted activity there is. So you can go and do that on your own. I don't have any copies left, but America's Historic Haunts, I cover all 50 states of places. So if you're an armchair ghost investigator, these are fine. If you actually like getting out and seeing these places, that's the type of book. As I said, never know where life's going to take you. Somehow I became a comic book character. Yes, that's me on the front, where I am forever young and good looking. So praise be to comic artists. I'm waiting for the action figure. I don't know what that's but I know my husband and friends will probably do terrible things with it, so maybe I better skip that. So let's jump right in. You can run, but you cannot hide. This is a house in Sussex County, New Jersey, so not too far from here, but well worth mentioning. This was a farmhouse for local workers, built in the mid-1800s. And even back then, people didn't stay long because they were hearing noises, footsteps, seeing dark figures, and they would run out. Well, it became a private house in the 1960s. The Wershing family purchased it. And a little background on the Wershings, he was in the oil industry and traveled a lot. And I saw a picture of Mrs. Wershing when she was very young. She was a Playboy bunny. Like, okay, we have a very interesting couple here. Well, their poor kids in the middle of the night would hear these sounds, see figures. They would actually climb out. I don't know if this will, no, the pointer won't work on the screen. To the right, there's a porch. They would climb out of their second-story windows onto the roof of the porch, shimmy down and run to a neighbor's house to spend the night. Like, well, why don't you sell? You know, they were adamant, this is our house, no one's getting us out of this house. Well, there's 2 incidences that I would have left, no question asked. This doll was made as a prize for their granddaughter. She was the queen of the Sussex County Fair, the farm market fair. And it was a beauty contest, and she looked like that day. So a doll was made with her dress. So a very nice gift. Well, flash forward, the daughter's grown up. She's going to college out in New Mexico. And the doll has sat on this table for 10, 12 years. One day, Mrs. Wershing goes into the room, and the doll's lying on the floor. She says, well, that's odd. So she just picks it up, puts it back on the table. About an hour or so later, she gets a call from the college saying, now your granddaughter's all right, but there's been an accident. They were removing asbestos from one of the buildings, and they did not put a warning on the door. Now, if you're removing asbestos, you need to keep it under negative pressure so the fibers don't escape. Well, she went to open the big metal door, the negative pressure pulled the door, severed her index finger. Well, Mrs. Wershing is thinking, wait a minute, that doll. So she went back and looked at the doll. Can you see what's missing here? The right index finger was gone. She said she was on her hands and knees for an hour. Look, they never found that finger. And she can't quite, with the time difference, she doesn't know, did the doll fall and break its finger first, or did the accident occur first? I said, well, whatever the case, you might want to wrap it in bubble wrap, give it an air hole. So this is so beyond coincidence. Again, would you not move if this happened? Yes. Well, one other thing happened. I often say the scariest thing in the house is this aluminum foil wallpaper. Must be going back to her Playboy bunny days in the 60s. But Mr. Wershing was not only an oil executive, he fancied himself kind of an Indiana Jones. So he would go around digging up Indian burial sites and bringing home the artifacts. Now that is not good, that is also highly illegal, and he would have a collection of skulls and funerary artifacts, really, but well, he had recently liberated one burial site, put all the objects at home, and then he took off on a long business trip. And Mrs. Wershing, she was not in this bedroom, she was in her own bed. This is her daughter's bedroom. She was in her own bedroom. She's sound asleep at night. She wakes up, the room is icy cold. She feels something lying against her back. And she said she could even hear it breathing in her ear. And she felt back and she said it felt like the hair of a dog. They didn't have a dog. So she jumped up, ran out, wouldn't sleep the rest of the night. The next night she's exhausted. She asked to get some sleep. She's home all alone. She goes, I'll go into my daughter's bedroom. It won't get me here. Middle of the night, she wakes up, same thing, icy cold. This thing is leaning against her. She goes to run out. She wants to see if she can see anything, so she turns around and looks. She doesn't see anything, but she said she hears this deep grumbling voice say, "Found you." Oh. Well, wouldn't you like to have been a fly on the wall when Mr. Wershing came home? She made him remove every single artifact, bone. They even had to bring in a real Roman Catholic exorcist for this one. So, clue to everyone, don't disrupt grave sites, and if you find something, don't bring it home because you don't know what you're bringing home. And they're still living there to this day. Wow. So, more power to them, not for me. All right, a lot of people think being a ghost investigator, ghost hunter is exciting, it's glamorous. You deal with a lot of tragedy, trauma, heartbreak, murders, suicides. It's very sad, and it gets to you. I mean, there are often times, we get back from an investigation, and for days, your mood is affected. This was one such case which kind of ended on a nice note. This is a home in the Hudson Valley. You see, kind of in need of repair. I had gotten a call that they were seeing an elderly woman and a little boy and a little girl, a little rambunctious boy and girl. And this was going on for a couple of years. I went to investigate. We found some interesting, compelling evidence. Didn't find anything to explain why these people were there. A couple of years later, I get a desperate call. Activity's just gone crazy. My kids can't sleep. It's happening all the time. We don't know why. Can you come back up? So, sure, we'll come back up. I went with a friend of mine, Mike Warden. He's an actual police sergeant from Port Jervis. Always good to have a policeman with you on these things. And a friend of mine, Lisa Ann, who's a psychic. Now, a lot of people don't believe in psychics. A lot of people do not want a psychic in their house. They don't trust them. They were so desperate, they said, bring anybody you want. So I never told Lisa Ann where we were going or what we were possibly about to encounter. So I would just tell her I'd meet her someplace, I'd pick her up, and I threatened one time to put a white bag over her head, throw her in the back of a van, and bring her to an undisclosed location, but I didn't have to go that far. So we get here, she gets out of the car, she looks up in the upstairs attic windows, and she said, there's an elderly woman looking down on us. Okay, I didn't say anything. We go inside, she says, I hear the pitter-patter of little feet. I said, what, kids? She goes, yeah. She said, a little boy and a little girl. So we're not there 2 minutes, and she zeroed in on these two. And she kept saying, this old woman, she regrets never having children of her own. So I think that's why she's here taking care of this little boy and this little girl. So this went on for a while. We definitely heard some strange things. And we're about ready to go, and I said, why would that elderly woman who had trouble walking, why would she be up in you can see what the attic looks like. Why would she be up there? And I said, I just think there's something, this gut feeling, something we're supposed to find. So again, not very glamorous. I'm crawling around on hands and knees under rafters with, cobwebs and nails. But I find these things, a letter, a little book, and a photo, and some different things. And in the back of this book, there had been a woman who lived in the house, had kept a diary. And we went, it was just a regular book, but they used to make pages, a lot of blank pages. She used it as a diary. So we bring it down into the kitchen where we can, because it was, dark up there. And we start reading it, and this woman writes, I ain't got no one to call me mom. And she she alluded to being left at the altar, never got married, didn't know any men, and never had children. And that was it. I was in tears, everybody there was in tears. That was the thing. And why all this activity would happen so intensely, because 2 weeks later, they lost the lease on the house and moved. So that was their window of opportunity to get us back up there and find this material. And from the moment we read those words, the activity stopped. So we put all of this in a box for the owners, because it's not ours. We put it all in the box for the owners of the house. The family moved out. A few weeks later, she called. She goes, Linda, you're not going to believe this. She said, we were in our new house, 30 miles away. I'm driving along. It's sunny. I needed my sunglasses, so I asked my daughter to get my sunglasses out of the glove compartment. She opens the glove compartment. The book was in it.
Oh my goodness.
So I think a little thank you for a lot of these cases. People die with regrets. They have a story to tell. There's something that's unresolved. And if we can figure out what that is and tell their story, many times it ends the activity. Patchett House in Montgomery, you may know it's the Wallkill River School of Art now. It began as a stagecoach stop. It was a private home of the Patchett family, who owned a mill on the Wallkill River just down the street. And it has a very long history of being haunted. Shondell Joyce, who you may know, yes, a wonderful woman. When she first started working there, doors would close, so they'd see figures. One time she's conducting an art class, and a phone is ringing. The phones that had real bells, so we all old enough to remember real bell phones, and it just kept ringing and ringing. And finally one of the students said, well, please answer that phone. She said, I will if I could find it. No one ever found, they couldn't tell where the phone was coming. No phone was hooked up. They never found this phantom phone. one of the Patchett descendants is an actual brain surgeon, real brain surgeon, so, you know, very highly educated man. He's driving by this house one day, and in this window here, he sees his Aunt Emma standing there waving at him. That's wonderful. The house had been boarded up for 10 years, and Aunt Emma had been dead for over 20. So I spoke to him directly, and he said, absolutely no doubt, that was his Aunt Emma. These 3 sinks lined up are in the basement. Why would you have 3 sinks in a row? Do I hear an answer?
Pre-rinse, wash.
Autopsies.
Pre-rinse, wash, and rinse. I heard autopsies. That's this was a funeral home for a while. These were the embalming sinks. You can see these pieces of wood. They would put the rack with the holes in it. They put the bodies on there to embalm. I've given tours here, and people say, "Oh, embalming sinks," and they jump up on top of them. It never ends well. But a lot of activity has happened down in this area. So we've done many investigations here. This is not my normal eyes. This is an infrared picture. It's completely dark. When you take photos in infrared, you get these glowing alien eyes. And I'm sitting above the embalming room, and you can see in my right hand I'm holding something with lights on it. That is an EMF meter, an electromagnetic field meter, and it measures electromagnetic fields. Sometimes when there's activity, paranormal activity, these lights will go off. So I'm sitting here in the dark. Mike happened to take this picture at this moment. My meter's going off. We hear a sound, the loudest sound I've ever heard on any investigation, hands down. It sounded like someone on the first floor had dragged a couch, picked it up, and thrown it. So I'm like, wah! I immediately start running down the stairs. Mike puts his arm in front of me. He's convinced someone just broke in. He's got his hand on his gun, and he's like, no, you let me go first. I said, that's probably wise. So we were behind Mike. Went downstairs. We checked every door and window, locked up tight. We were the only ones in there. So I did get the sound on my digital recorder, which is in my other hand, but we got something else. Those are the embalming sinks in the basement. Here's another one of our EMF meters right here. We don't know if it's the exact second. At about the time that we were hearing this terribly threatening banging noise, something set off the trail camera in the basement. Now, you may have, there are these square things that hunters use, they strap to a tree, and when a deer goes by, it takes a series of photos so they know what kind of game is in the area. Well, these are great for ghost investigations, because if something, you set them up around and they don't go off unless something sets them off. So this goes off and takes a series of photos. So about this banging time, this went off. So something solid, you know, a moth won't set off a trail camera. Something solid, but you don't see anything. In the next photo, something has a hold of the camera, and in the next photo, something is big enough to be shaking that camera. We tried everything to reproduce this. I said, even if someone had been hiding in the house and grabbed the camera, let's try it. So we had the camera, I grabbed it with my hand. My skin looks bright, bright white. You know the way my eyes glowed in infrared? My skin looked bright, bright white. You could see every single fingerprint. We tried it with black leather gloves. They look like white leather gloves. We couldn't reproduce this. Again, a moth wouldn't do this. We have no idea what this was. We don't do ghost investigations at the Wallkill River School anymore. After this night, they had, everything was stirred up, all kinds of things. And we tried one more event, and it just seems to aggravate. I don't think it's just Aunt Emma. there just seems to aggravate things. And she said, Linda, I love doing this, but we can't do this anymore because it just disrupts too much. So if you want to go and take a nice art class there, feel free. All right, as much as I rely on experience and interviews, I love technology. And my husband Bob one year bought me a FLIR camera, which is forward-looking infrared. When police helicopters are looking for suspects in the woods, they have these FLIR cameras because you've probably seen the footage, even if it's pitch black, the person shows up like a glowing figure. So we like to use different wavelengths to look at haunted sites. This is a site in Port Jervis. I haven't even written about this yet, so you're getting the scoop here. It's a historic home with some government offices, which probably just gave it away. But this is, there's a rectangular square staircase that spirals up to the attic. You can see what kind of shape it's in. And this is a flash photo. Now I'm in this stairwell by myself. I took this photo because I'm standing there one level down, and to me it looked like someone was leaning over the banister looking down. I'm like, is that my imagination? I saw it a couple times, so I got the FLIR camera going. This is how it looks. The blue is the darker, colder. The pink is the warmer. This is some sort of, I think it's a fire alarm or something electrical. So this is how it looked normally. When I thought I saw someone was peering over, I saved another image and got this. It's anomalous. That's all I can say. You can see this shape right where I thought it looked like somebody was leaning over looking down. That's the image I got. Again, can I say what it is? No, but it's certain. I physically saw something, and the FLIR camera saw something. And this is a warmer, and then that is very dark, so that is something very, very cold. And we have seen great temperature drops during investigations. So just throwing it out there that we may or may not have caught something there. Okay, this is another story I haven't written about yet, Port Jervis. Port Jervis has a lot of hauntings. Little boy, about 3.5 years old, had an imaginary friend in their new house. And he called her regular grandma. And regular grandma used to sit on the stairs between floors, and she was very nice, and they would talk all the time. And well, why are you calling her regular grandma? Well, because we have mommy's, grandma on mommy's side, we have grandma on daddy's side, and this is just regular grandma. To him, that was, So he kept describing her in such detail. They talked to the former owners, which were these brothers, and they said, well, our mother died in that house, and she used to sit, that was her favorite spot, sitting on those stairs. Okay, so they got a collection of photos. Again, you never say, is this the woman you saw? You put a bunch of photos out and let him. So they had a coffee table, they showed me a coffee table full of photos, all these people, and little boy walks up, there's regular grandma. That was her. So why was regular grandma there? They couldn't figure it out. And this went on for a while, and the activity kept growing. Well, one of the brothers finally realizes, our mother was cremated, and she had asked to be scattered, and we forgot to scatter her ashes. She's still sitting in the closet at home. So they finally had the ceremony she had requested, scattered her ashes where she had requested. Regular grandma hasn't been back. So when a loved one gives you some last wishes, you might want to honor them, or they might haunt you, or the people who buy the next house. All right, the Peach Grove Inn in Warwick. Anyone ever been there? It's a beautiful location. I think it 18 years ago, went there for, they had a tea. We went there for my birthday, my husband and I and some friends. And of course, I couldn't help myself, midst of tea. Do you have any ghosts here? And next thing I know, the owners are sitting down at our table telling us about all these stories. They were seeing people, well, guests were seeing people, their daughter was seeing people. Before it was a bed and breakfast, there's bedrooms upstairs, and the window to the right of the porch was a bedroom for the son and daughter of the owner. And one night, the father upstairs hears this terrible row going on, this man and woman screaming at each other. So he comes downstairs, and the parlor doors on the left are closed, and this man and woman are screaming at each other, and he's like, I never heard my son and daughter-in-law, because I'm not sticking my nose in. And he went upstairs and he heard a door slam, and running down the porch and out to the left is a woman in like a 1860s gown. He's like, I don't want to know what they're doing. You know, this is too bizarre. But the next morning, he can't help himself. He says to his son, what were you two doing last night? What are you talking about? I heard the argument. I saw your wife run off. And he's like, Dad, you're nuts. He said, we went to bed early. We didn't hear a thing. So this is just one of the things that happened. Upstairs, this is the bedroom. If you're looking at the front of the house to the left, many guests have reported the smell of fresh flowers, an intense smell of fresh flowers in here, even in the middle of winter when there aren't any flowers. There's a room in the back where several women have said they've woken up in the middle of the night, felt like someone was kissing them on their cheek. In the bedroom to the right side of the porch upstairs, husband and wife were in bed. She wakes up. There's an elderly man standing by the bed looking at her, and a big black dog jumps onto the bottom of the bed. She felt the weight. She felt the dog and the dog sat or laid down, like on her feet. She's like, what is going on? Who are these people? The dog jumps down, disappears, and the man disappears. So she didn't say anything the next morning. Finally, her kids told her when she got home, you have to say something. So she wrote a letter. So the owners at the time, John and Lucy, they're like, what do we do with this? So they found a former owner, and they said, look, this woman's probably crazy. She was dreaming, whatever. So tell us the story. They said, oh, I know the name of that guy. And give me a moment, I'll make a call and get you the name of that dog. Because that was a common occurrence. That had happened for generations there. An old man and his dog, which is kind of nice to think the man and his dog I'm a big dog lover, so that they're still together. But nothing ever terrible or threatening happens here, but it's, obviously startling if you wake up in the middle of the night and someone's looking at you. But this is a wonderful place to go if you've never been there to stay. I wouldn't blame you if you don't. But they do have other events. Certainly a magnificent home. It was built in 1850 by Colonel Wheeler. Magnificent home. All right, I had promised a battlefield. Fort Montgomery battlefield, which you probably all know where that is. That's the Bear Mountain Bridge there, and this is one of the gun emplacements. When they first built the new visitor center 10, 15 years ago, I immediately started getting calls. Do you hear what's going on? They're seeing figures, this, that. And I'm like, as much as I would love to investigate a historic battlefield of this caliber, I'm thinking, there is no way they're going to let me in. A lot of historic places, it's like, oh, the G word, that sullies our integrity. 2 weeks later, Fort Montgomery calls me. We're having a lot of activity. Could you come by? And I'm like, yes. So basically the background of the battle, about 3,000 British attacked on the morning of October 6, 1777. Forts Montgomery and Clinton, defended by only about 600 American soldiers and militia. Fierce fighting, but they were overrun. The forts were eventually burned. One thing that we do not know is what did the British do with all the bodies. They had great contempt for the American soldiers, particularly the militia. How dare farmers with guns challenge the British Empire? So what they did, they would just throw them in heaps. And there's a description months later where they, near Fort Montgomery, there was a pond that somebody came by and it was just piled with American militia bodies. So they were never given a proper burial. And to this day, no one knows where those remains are. So this might explain when people show up for an event at the visitor center and come inside and say, that is the best militiaman reenactor we have ever seen. I mean, so spot on. And they just absolutely won't believe that no one had been hired. Another local building, they saw a British soldier, came in one wall, walked through the lobby and walked out the other wall. So these are seen all the time. There's still 14 acres of battlefield you can explore there if you're looking to do your own investigation. This is one of the foundations of one of the barracks. That is not a ghost, that is Mike back there. We brought Lisa Ann, the psychic here, who, she's the first one to tell you she knows nothing about history. But she was there and she said, well, I see an officer, he's up above, he's not on the ground floor, he's up above, he's writing a letter saying how despicable the conduct of the American officers is here, and he's afraid that someone has betrayed them. And she's going on, and we had one of the historians of the site was with us, and his eyes just kept getting wider and wider, and he said, yes, this was a 2-story building, and the officer would have been up above. He said, yes, the conduct of the American officers wasn't exactly sterling. Some of them ran off, most of them escaped, whereas the common soldier did not. And yes, there was a man who was sent to get reinforcements and was actually looking to defect to the British, so he delayed long enough so the reinforcements didn't get there in time. So all of this she got by standing by the ruins here. Again, not ghosts, these are mannequins. A lot of the artifacts in this visitor center are from the soldiers themselves that died on the battlefield. So she walked in, she said it was like a grand central station of energies. One thing that caught my eye, just loved here, one of the American soldiers had enameled sleeve buttons that said Liberty. So if you go there, definitely check those out. Again, that's what this man was wearing, fighting for our country when he died. Now many staff have told me of seeing figures moving around in the facility and also outside looking in, which is, I don't know which is more unnerving. Well, actually this is more unnerving. This is the basement where the program room is. One day, one of the maintenance workers came in, it was a snowy day, and he had something to do inside, and he hears all this noise coming down from the basement level. He said it sounded like people were down there talking and moving furniture. He thought, oh, they must be getting ready for an event. So he goes to the top of the stairs, the lights are off. And he's like, wait a minute, there was no other car in the parking lot. There were no footsteps in the snow leading to the building. Who's down there moving furniture? He said he couldn't have run out fast enough. So an enormous amount goes on at this location. So whether it's for the ghosts or the history, if you haven't been to Fort Montgomery, strongly recommend it. And the staff there, they're brilliant. They can tell you every minute of the battle. So we go from one creepy underground place to another. Does anybody have any idea where this is located? the former Orange Inn and the current Limoncello. Yes, this was affectionately referred to as the dungeon. I don't know if they've cleaned it up, but the courthouse and prison used to be there, and then the building in 1790, I believe, was built on top of it, but this is still down there. And the owner at the time, Mimi, this probably goes back 20 years, we went down there, and again, I could spend all day on this, seeing figures, a woman in a blue nightgown, someone they describe as a man in an Abraham Lincoln hat, so a stovepipe hat, doors closing and opening, you name it. But the dungeon is particular kind of interesting. And we're down there. I was in front. A woman who worked at the library at the time, Linda, was behind me, Mimi, and then my husband Bob. And this was in our early days. And Bob's like, "I'll carry all the cameras." I'm like, "That's a great idea." So I had no camera. I'm going through here, something starts banging, remember it's pitch black, something starts banging on the pipes over our head. And I'm like, Mimi, do these pipes, because these pipes don't even have anything in them, they shouldn't do. So it sounds like someone's hitting these pipes with a wrench. We come out through this hole, and there's, I can only describe it as like a misty shape, like a little foggy shape. And I go to grab a camera, I realize I have no camera. So I'm yelling at my husband, "Get out here fast and come out shooting. Take these pictures," because this mist is starting to dissipate. I realize he's not going to make it, and I'm like, I am not going to lose this opportunity. So I just took a deep breath, I stepped forward, and I stuck my hand right in the middle of it. It felt cool. The thing I can describe, it felt dense. That's I don't know how else to describe it. It felt heavy and dense. It didn't feel like I was putting my hand into fog or steam or mist. And then it just dissipated. Bob saw, he glimpsed it, but by the time he raised his camera, it was gone. So we learned a very interesting lesson. Everybody carries a camera. Everybody carries some sort of digital recorder. The one that got away. But this didn't get away. On a future investigation, again, this is very grainy, it's an infrared video, where in the hallway, this is the kitchen, the kitchen door, it's a swinging kitchen door. It doesn't swing very easily, it gets stuck and you really have to shove it. So this door was closed, we're standing in the hallway, we start getting like a 20-degree drop in temperature, and it just, you get the goosebumps, you're like, whoa, something's going on. And all of a sudden we hear this creaking noise, and on video, this kitchen door just swings right open. So you can see we're all looking down there like, what? So, we went and checked it out, and sure enough, it closes really hard, and, we tried blowing on it and pushing. You really have to shove that thing. So the cold air, the unnerving feeling, and the door opening itself. I said, okay, this is good. I don't know if they're still interested in doing ghost investigations there with the new owners. Does anyone know? Did they do anything like that anymore? They do something? Okay. So if they do have some sort of event and you're interested, I strongly recommend. This is another one of those, you get your photos, this was back in the day of actually getting photos developed. And I just, at the end of the night, just wanted to take a picture of the outside of it. And I got this, and everybody's telling me, that's a person, that it's, I don't know. Like a head and the shoulders, it could have been mist and my flash reflecting, but I show it because people, do you have any pictures of ghosts? I don't think so, but I don't know. Does it look like anything to anybody?
Are there two light sources? Maybe sometimes both lights reflect off one another and go onto the lens. Could that be?
Possibly. I don't. I don't even remember the circle because I didn't see anything. I was just like, well, I'm going to take a photo of the outside of the building just for my record. So something to show. But I've got something that we can't explain coming up in a moment. This is my favorite case. The columns in Milford, Pennsylvania, right over, if you go out 84. This was a private home. This was a very wealthy man from Jersey City. This was one of his homes. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't realize initially what was housed here. This flag is connected with the Lincoln assassination. When Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater, the flag that was draped over the presidential box, they pulled it up, they bunched it up and put it under his head as a pillow. And there is Lincoln's bloodstains from the night of his assassination. So, honestly, how many people knew this existed there? Okay, good. Okay, good. We have a historic crowd. Most times people had no clue. So again, worth going to this museum for that. This is an interesting torture-looking device. This is a hair curling machine. Yes, what women, you can't, it's priceless to see the picture of this woman is like, anyway, she's all hooked up to this device here. Well, the curator, the head of the Collins Museum, heard about what we do, sent Mike the keys and the passcode, which just boggles my mind. Said, yeah, anytime you want to go. So he and I went one night, and I've got my Ghost Investigator baseball cap on and all my gear, and he's down the hall, and we get to this room. I get to this room, and I look, and I said, oh, you have to see this hair curling machine. As I said, hair, a finger went up the back of my baseball cap, I swear to God, and started going like this. And I just froze, and he's looking at me, he goes, what's wrong? I said, did I lean up against a coat rack? Is there, a hanging plant? I said, what is, because there's nothing behind you. And I just got the image. I'm not a psychic, but you do a couple of hundred of these, things come to you. I got the image of this woman with upswept hair and a puffy sleeved shirt, and I said, she just knows who I am. She just read me like a book. I just had that creepy feeling. So we're going up the staircase, and at the banister there, you see I'm stopped because I picture her right there. I was like, she's right there. I don't even want to go by her. She was the most conscious and interactive ghost spirit, whatever you want to call it. She was so in your face. It was remarkable. And I think she stands right about here. So here I am later on in the night. I've got my back up against the wall because I don't even want to be within reach of this one. I'm just staring at that location. A couple of minutes after this photo was taken, I hear the swishing of those, what was it, crinoline? The old times you hear swish, swish, swish. And I hear it on the first floor heading towards the back of the museum. And I said to Mike, there's something she wants me to find. I had that feeling. I said, I absolutely know it. She knows who I am, and there's something she wants me to find. So I go running after the sound. Mike goes running after me. Again, place is dark. And the sound ends up in an office. I was so disappointed. I said, what is she going to do, send me a fax? And he said, well, what about those? You see all the file cabinets. I said, that could take me 10 years to go. I said, all right, I'll try. So I am so engrossed at this point. I go over, I open a drawer, I pull out some, and I'm crouched on the floor, and Mike says, Linda, you look like a burglar. He said, we could turn on the lights, and you could sit at the desk. I was just so in, all right. So I'm flipping through, and I was like, oh, well, this is interesting websites. It's about ghost things. And it's the first one, ghostinvestigator.com. And I said, that's a great name for a website. That's my website. And I'm like, no way. I pull out the one folder, so I hand it to Mike. He goes, you didn't read down below, did you? And I said, no. Spelled incorrectly, but Linda Zimmerman, a paranormal expert, visited the museum I hear this sound. I think this woman is trying to tell me she knows who I am. I follow the sound. I pull out the one folder that has the one article that has my name on it. How do you even make this stuff up? I mean, just mind-boggling. So who is this woman? Talked to the historian there, and this was a Juliet Pierce. And you can see the hair upswept, the sleeves, puffy sleeves. Her husband was the man who developed the philosophy of pragmatism. Pierce, you can look him up. And he predeceased her, and she wore mourning clothes for decades. And when she died, all of her belongings were brought to the museum. Well, guess what happens when that happens? I think she came along. I did some research on her. She was known for her intense psychic abilities. She used to read people's fortunes. There's a mystery. She may have been a gypsy in Europe. There's, all of this interesting background on her. But remember where I told you I thought she stood by that balcony? Well, just when I was writing this story for the book years ago, I get a call from the woman from the museum. She said, this may or may not be of interest to you. She said, we had an event, this woman was here, and she kept going in and out, and people were staying about an hour, but she was there for hours. She finally came up to me and said, you have a ghost. It's a woman with upswept hair, and she stands right at the top of that balcony, and she went through the same thing. So, strongly recommend, if you have an interest in this type of thing, to go to the Collins Museum, say hi to Juliet. The history there is wonderful as well. But my favorite, people always say, what is your favorite case? This is it, because it was so personal, and it was somebody you could track it down to. Okay, to finish off, I can't go gently on you. After all, you asked for it. You came for a ghost story. This was a somewhat modern house, probably built in the 60s. Do you know where Pomona, New York is? Okay, near the orchards there. Very, a modern-looking. Didn't look like your typical haunted house. I get a call from the people who were renting it. They said, we're breaking our lease. We can't stand it. Footsteps running up and down the central spiral staircase. 2 of their dogs died really mysteriously. That's what got me. You don't mess with the dogs. Objects would come, she said, objects would literally come off a shelf, fly across the room and smash. The worst was they'd wake up in the middle of the night and there was a dark, hunched over figure leaning down, staring at them. So they had candles and religious artifacts everywhere in the house. It wasn't working. They said, we're done. We're out of here. You have, 2 weeks to come and investigate. So I did come and investigate. This is what the living room looks like. I want you to see what it looks like in daylight. You have the couch here, the entertainment center, this kind of bizarre statue, and the 2 walls of windows with very thin curtains. So this is what it looks like in daylight. I was there obviously at night. It just seemed like someone who wanted to mess with you. We'd be upstairs, we'd hear banging downstairs. We'd go downstairs, there'd be banging upstairs. And, this little cat and mouse game is very unpleasant. Just, sometimes you walk into a room and you're like, ugh. Well, multiply that by about 10. So it's towards the end of the night. I'm packing up my gear. And I see there's a very faint light coming through those curtains. And I see something solid blocking the light. It's moving in this direction, from this side across that wall over to here. So you don't jump to conclusions. The woman's standing behind me, and I said, maybe a truck just went by, a street light. She goes, no, we're about 100 feet back. There is no street light. She said that light is mounted here on the outside of the house. I'll never forget these words. She said, in order for something to block that light, it has to be in the room with you. Okay. So I grab my infrared camera, I just start snapping away. You know, the backs, screens on the backs of cameras were very small back then, so it was hard to see. It wasn't until I got home and put it on the computer that I saw what was in the room with me. So this is that statue, the couch. I've sent this to at least three different, no, probably nine, by now, 5 different photo experts, and they can't explain it. I'll go back again. You can see there's nothing there. Again, no coat rack, no hanging plant, nothing that should have created this dark figure. And you can see it's almost hunched back. When I showed the people renting this photo, that's it. That's what they would wake up and see, this hunched over thing staring at them. They left. As best as we can tell, the man who built this house was a really, really bad, criminally bad character. And I always say death does not improve one's personality. And he appears to still be trying to victimize people, particularly women. And I don't know who's renting the place now. I spoke to the caretaker. He didn't really want to say what he knew, but he said they should just burn that place to the ground. So if you're looking for a new place, don't rent this one. Call me first. But just check places out. Some places you walk in, you just feel good. You say, I want to live here. And some places you walk in and like, ugh. Honor that feeling. You don't know what it is. Who can explain it? But you want to. Your home should be the one place where you're happy and comfortable and feel safe, not have this looking over you in the middle of the night. So thank you, you've been a wonderful office. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We can have time, questions, or if anybody has Goshen ghost stories they'd like to share with us.
I am always looking for new stories. Yes, in the back.
I have a question. Do you ever feel afraid?
Do I ever feel afraid? Scared out of my mind on occasions, yes. Haven't run from a site yet. I've walked rather briskly away, but yeah, you can. You know, there was an asylum up in near upstate New York, and it was just absolutely horrible. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. It's terrifying. You know, and you're in the dark and something's banging on the wall next to your head. It's startling, and yeah, it gets scary.
Have you ever brought any home with you?
I ever brought any home with me? I hope not. I hope not. I go through this little mental thing. You know, everybody stay here. Honestly, I get home, all the clothes go into the wash. I take a shower. I just do a mental, because a lot of people, I invite everything home. Well, you're crazy. There was a police officer. There was a factory where a man died in an accident, and he thought it would be cool to have a brick from the factory. He's a police officer. He's got it in the back of his car. He's driving across the Newburgh Beacon Bridge, and he looks in his rearview mirror, and there's a guy sitting in his. This cop stops his car in the middle of the bridge, takes the brick and throws it in the river. So he learned his lesson. Just don't invite things or bring them home. We all have enough to worry about without bringing these things home.
Your investigations always seem to be at night. Is that only when the paranormal activity happens? Does it ever happen during the day?
Yeah, I should have pointed out the one with the woman who I ain't got no one to call me mom. That was during the morning. It was an early morning one. A lot of things happen at night, maybe because things are quieter, I don't know. But one of the best daytime stories was at Oak Hill Cemetery in Nyack, across from Nyack Hospital. The caretaker saw the woman in broad daylight, bright sunny spring day, walking from her grave and just disappearing. Yeah, so anytime, yes.
Have you ever gone to the Middletown Psych Center?
I have not. I came this close to getting permission, but have not. They're very disturbing places.
Cornell has a building there, and they may let you into the place.
Okay. I would certainly give it a try. it isn't as easy nowadays to get access because now they want you to have $1 million insurance, liability and things. Well, because there's a lot of irresponsible groups. I know one museum, some group of kids came in and said, oh, you were great. They broke a priceless vase. And what do? Who pays for that? So, it's not as easy. Yes?
I mean, I could certainly see where a lot of these things would scare people, but it doesn't seem like they do any actual harm to people.
99% of the time, no. But I think scaring you in your own home. There was a guy in Warwick. He ran out of the house in the middle of the night in his underwear. He would never go back into his own home. He never would tell me what happened. He still to this day won't tell me, but he just wouldn't. So that's harm in it, maybe inadvertent harm. But some of them, Mike was pushed down a flight of stairs. Mike's a big guy. He got absolutely shoved. And some people do have been scratched or pushed or something like that. But for the most part, no. They are, I don't want to say passive, but they don't hurt you the most. They terrify you, but
When people buy antiques,
Yes.
did you ever hear of anybody breaking
oh,
them?
antiques is like the number
I was
one
just curious.
thing. Yeah,
Bring it home. It's a free-
paintings are big, portraits. One family brought home a fedora, put it in the guest room. Saw a man sitting in the chair with the fedora. I know of someone who bought an old antique bed and kept hearing a little boy coughing, and finally went back to the antique dealer and said, okay, you're buying this back, first of all, now tell me the truth. And a little boy had died of pneumonia in the bed. So just, again, be careful.
Don't you also investigate UFO claims?
Yes.
It's an incident that's unexplainable that I witnessed. Nothing dramatic, but
Yeah.
I just wondered if you did that as well.
How I got, again, trust me, I never planned on doing that. I would give a ghost lecture such as this, and often 2, 3, 4 people would come up to me and start telling me their UFO story. I'd be like, why are you telling me this? Did you see what I was just talking about? He said, no, this is a story you need to tell. So that's another bizarre aspect of the Hudson Valley. Tens of thousands of people over the last couple of generations have had these. So we live in a weird and wonderful place.
They may overlap as well, the
Yeah, Pine Bush especially. Yes, been there, done that.
Yeah?
Yes. Excuse me?
It looks pretty bad.
Oh, it looks pretty bad. The Rusty Nail was the train station that became the restaurant. It's in bad shape, falling apart. I was there many years ago, but it's a very long story. But yes, one of my most unbelievable things happened there. And many people see, I was there with the local fire department has a ghost hunting group. And we were there and we just saw, from upstairs, we saw a set of legs. You couldn't see the whole person, just walk right by on the next floor. And we're like, what the heck? Who else is here? So, all these big firemen, they go running upstairs to apprehend whoever this is. There's nobody there. But we were there with the radio station. We were there with MJ from who used to be a journalist. Did a story there. Yeah, that was extremely active. I would not go in there now. I don't think floors were already starting to deteriorate. So, yes,
The Old North Church graveyard in Newburgh.
I have not been
I
there.
had a personal experience there myself.
Okay. Would you?
It's right down from Washington's headquarters. I'm a fence contractor, and I was told to go there by the maintenance company who runs the graveyard. I took out a wheel to measure the line of fence that they wanted me to measure. And I had parked the car. They told me how to get in there. I went in with the car, opened the door, left the door open, went over and I measured with a wheel. I took the wheel out. I started measuring on top of the hill. where they want the fence to go. I packed the wheel up, I'm packing the wheel up, I'm walking away, and I tucked the wheel underneath my left arm. And I have a paper, my book, that I'm writing the measurements down. As I'm walking up the hill toward my car, something hits the back of my wheel in the opposite direction. If I was going to hit the wheel going up the hill, it would spin this way,
Right.
okay? It hit it in the opposite direction. Freaked out. Before this, you couldn't talk to me about ghosts, and I wonder how many people here have had any type of ghost encounters, but I ran back to my car, but I didn't run, I took a quick.
That's what we like to tell ourselves.
As
We
I
walk
got in my
briskly.
car, I went to go over and close the door, and the door slammed.
Oh, and good riddance to you, apparently.
I had talked to somebody who lost a daughter in a ski accident about 16 years ago in Wyndham. And they have, their daughter visits them in their house. And sitting down to dinner with them, I told them my story. And she goes, well, there's certain different encounters, and I'm sure you've encountered them yourself, where a ghost actually touches you. There's certain increments of how
Right.
they get in touch with people. And they said that when someone touches you, ghost touches you, that's probably about the closest thing in an encounter you could have with a ghost, other than them talking to you.
Right.
But that's a personal experience. The Old North Church.
All
prayed
good.
door.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I believe in
Yes.
ghosts.
The question is, did you put the fence up?
Yeah, no. Still isn't there.
Good for you. Thank you.
We live in Chester. We bought a house in Chester, and we lived in this house, I don't know, a few years we lived in that. And I kept walking around going, there's somebody smoking, there's somebody smoking, there's somebody smoking. We'd walk around the house, walk around the house, walk around the house. Nothing. And it was a cigar. It smelled
Okay.
cigar. Okay. We had a yard sale, and this elderly woman came to the house, and she starts talking about the house, that her grandparents lived in this house, they were Polish, and she gave me all these stories. So we said, do you want to come in the house and see the differences in the house? She ends up, no questions for me, nothing, ends up telling us how Grandpa, sitting at the table, smoking a cigar, dropped dead sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
So now, when we smell the cigar, we walk around and say something, I'm Polish. I walk around and go, Polski Grandpa, enough.
Good for you.
Very good.
Good. Yeah, that I hear that type of thing all the time. When you understand what it is
Yep.
and you address it,
Yeah.
that's it. Wonderful.
Nothing
story.
scary.
No, he's just
Yeah,
He's welcome there.
he's just hanging out, smoking his cigar.
Yeah, smoking a cigar. I don't care. Now that I know what it is, you know.
Exactly.
And what was it you told me?
Oh, up top, yes.
In English, what was that?
Polski Grandpa?
Polski
is supposed to be
Oh.
Cemetery in Port Jervis, just over the bridge up of one.
Laurel Grove.
Laurel Grove, yeah, it's on the left-hand side of what I was in there on a walk or whatnot. And we had some experience after we felt and saw certain things and had some pictures of certain things as far as the walk or whatnot. And that was as close as we actually got to actually really feeling something very, very intense. We felt very strong.
Yeah, Laurel Grove is very active.
Very active.
Right, people see a woman, walking around, a little kid, and I don't know if you know the history that floods had washed away coffins on the side, and they went down as far as Philadelphia, so if people aren't resting in peace, that might be. But they've had all kinds of, we've had some intense activity there as well. So Laurel Grove Cemetery, just as you're coming into Port Jervis, it's where the two rivers meet there. Police have been called to, because of activity, and they can't find the person that's wandering around. So yeah, good place to go. Yes.
I have a Goshen story.
Yes.
We bought a house that was built in the 1800s, and it was in a little disarray, so we did a lot of fixing up. and we kept hearing things moving and upstairs, and we were missing a few articles. My parents had met the man that had lived in the house, and he was since put in a nursing home. And I had gone to a psychic with a bunch of girlfriends, and the psychic, I didn't say anything to her, but she said, "You have a ghost protecting your house." And I said, "What?" She said, "A man walking the perimeter of the house in a fedora and a black jacket. He was born there, and he's just making sure you take care of it. And he will be comfortable and leave when he knows you will." So after a few years, he did go. I'm not going to give you the address because we have some she'll kill me. But I met the
Did she
current-
have,
yeah, the
she
current
had the
owner.
same thing?
Yeah. So we did a little research, and we know his name and everything, and he was born in the house and died shortly thereafter. After we bought it, but just missing things and hearing noises, but nothing bad.
Right. I hear that so many times that people, when they first move in, the first
Yeah. couple
couple of months, and then it's like, okay, we've been accepted, and then there's no. I have a story about that. I don't know if any of you have heard of Dr. Martha McGuffey. She was a famous surgeon and philanthropist. She lived on South Mountain Road in New City in this beautiful building, a house that had been built in the manner of a Scottish castle, Scottish manor house. And soon after they moved in, they were hearing noises, footsteps, and they saw a very tall man with straight white hair looking at them very sternly, and then, would just disappear. And the daughter of the man who built the house, an older woman, came by one day, and they said, we just have to ask. People keep seeing this talk. That was my dad. He was 6'6", long white hair. He loved that house so much. He's buried in the backyard, and his tombstone says, "From this place I shall never roam." And he's not. He is still, but he is nice. He, again, just wanted to make sure you are taking care of my house. Yes.
Two of my closest friends in the world moved into a house in Briarcliff, and I went down the weekend they moved in to help them. And we were bringing things up to the third floor attic, and the gentleman who had sold the house left a lot of crap there, and I think we threw some of it away, some of it we just pushed in the corner, and
Right.
my girlfriend said, "I want to go through it, see if there's anything interesting in there." And so we did a lot of work and moved a lot of stuff up there, and toward the end of the evening, my girlfriend went upstairs, and my friend Marty and I were sitting in the living room and talking, and we were all a little exhausted, and we started hearing furniture moving. I mean, it was like the 7 Santini brothers were up there. So I'm looking at Marty, and he's like, "I don't know what she's doing, she never stops." So after a while, I said, "Look, let's go up and help her, for God's sake. She's really working up there." We go up, she's sound asleep in bed. So I said, "Oh my God, you have a ghost." I thought he was going to kill me. He's like, "Don't you ever say that again. Don't you ever bring it up in front of my children." And to this day, he will not let me discuss it.
Wow.
But it was so real, it was so loud, and we asked her the next morning. She said, "No, I wasn't moving furniture. What are you talking about?"
I hear that all. The Oak Hill Cemetery, the caretaker who saw the woman walking through, the night they moved in, he's laying in bed thinking, how does my wife have the energy to keep moving things? And he gets up, she's asleep, so I hear that all the day. It's moving, definitely coming in, doing alterations, can stir things up. Again, they're looking out for their homes. So, yes.
Okay, well, before this area was settled, anybody who lived in North America were more or less a nomadic people who moved around. So this country, and this North America, really wasn't settled until, let's say, the 1600s. But yet you go back to Europe and to societies in Asia, much older civilization, and yet you do not see the same curiosity about paranormal activity that you do here. Why would you explain this?
England you do, because they've had a paranormal society going back hundreds of years. But other countries, I think there's a superstition. We don't talk about the dead. We let them, they're more afraid of it. Asian countries, things like that. I think here, for whatever, we're closed about a lot of things, but for some reason we love our ghosts, and we are a lot more open to it. And a lot of it isn't personal. I think in some of these places, their families lived there for 200 years. We don't talk about the skeletons in the closet. We don't talk about those ghosts. So it's probably a lot of things, but you are right. That's one thing we are fairly open about.
Has your experience been more residual type ghosts or more like, they're there?
I would say probably about 50-50. But of course, the ones that are more in your face, I spend more time with. So maybe I just concentrate on those more. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Have you been to New Orleans?
No, I have not yet. No. But I have been, one city that is wildly haunted, St. Augustine, Florida, is another, yes. Oh, Lizzie Borden house, yes. Oh, I spent the night there. All right, do I have a few more moments?
Yep.
Quick Lizzie Borden story, one of the best cases. We went up there the anniversary week of the murders, the murders were August 1892, I believe. So we went there that week because the owners at the time, it's new owners, had said a lot of activity happens then. So Bob and I get up there and I go to open the front door because it's check-in time. No, I open the door, there's hello, nobody there. I go around the back. I come inside, there's a bunch of guests sitting in the living room. I said, well, where's, Mrs. Smith to check us in? Oh, nobody's here. How can I, well, it's filled with antiques. I was like, how can no staff be here? So they're all sitting and waiting. I don't wait well. Maybe an hour went by. I said, no, they knew I was coming. I was supposed to interview people. You can't have a bed and breakfast sitting open. It's across the street from a bus station in a not very good location. So I called the police to get the owner's name. I'm not reporting a crime. I just call and I said, hi, the Lizzie Borden house is filled with guests and there's no staff. And he's laughing and everything. And well, would they just step out? I said, no, people have been here for hours. There's no staff. He wasn't laughing anymore. 3 armed cops come bashing on the door. I open the door, cops are running in. This is the anniversary week of the Lizzie Borden murders. There had been a murder at the bus station the day before, and they were afraid the staff had been murdered. So I am standing there in complete awe that I am witnessing local police running around the house looking for murder victims. In the Lizzie Borden freaking house. One of the cops goes downstairs because he described shuffling footsteps. So he's gun drawn, chasing these footsteps to the back, and there's a coffin with a body in it. He thinks, oh my God, some sick person's murdered. So he sticks the gun in and pushes. He realizes it's a headless mannequin used for Halloween. He comes upstairs white as a sheet. And he made the mistake of telling me the story. But he said he, honest to God, heard somebody walking around down there. Another people said they heard crying from upstairs. So people are running all over the place chasing these noises. It turned out to be the one time in 7 years there had been a scheduling mix-up. So thank God nobody was killed. But, and then I had something, the old metal door latches. There's a bar that goes down and you have to press a lever that raises it up. I was staying upstairs. I heard hard-soled footsteps, shoes, walk up to my door, and I hear clink, and I watch the bar raise and the door open. I think someone's messing with the ghost investigators. So I do this ninja move. I jump over, yank open the door. Nobody was there. Nobody was on that floor or the floor below. So one of the most wild experiences. But it is a bed and breakfast. You can stay in the actual room where Lizzie Borden's stepmother was murdered. People request that room for their honeymoon night. Yeah, I would say, can you say prenup? But people have run out of that room, many. It is a horrible, horrible house. But, yeah, you want to stay there.
First of all, Linda, thank you very much for sharing
Thank
some
you.
of your experiences. I think it's great to get information out about paranormal and about what's going on in the area, especially the Hudson Valley haunts. I think it's good for people to recognize the history that we have around us and also some of the things that do happen around us. I'm going to share one experience that myself and my wife had. We do investigations in different locations. Captain Grant's, which is in Connecticut, up near the casino. It's a bed and breakfast, and we had the opportunity to be there all by ourselves for an entire weekend. And in fact, we had some great opportunities. They have a lot of antiques there. Just a note with antiques, yeah, things get attached to antiques pretty well, mirrors especially. So in terms of that, we went there and we actually were in the kitchen area. We were talking, sitting there and eating, and we actually heard, and this is in an area where there's not a lot of people around, we actually heard someone at the kitchen door in a very faint voice that said, "Let me in." Behind this particular location, there is also a cemetery that had been there for a while, and it was a family cemetery. Part of our investigation took us up into the attic area where we set up a camera, and there was proposed to be an individual who stayed up in the attic, and we were there for a while, and we were doing an EVP session, electronic voice phenomenon, and the camera, when we actually went back and viewed it, as we were moving, the camera actually moved to the different locations that we were at. So when I put down the video recorder, the camera actually followed my hand down and followed my hand away. It was an infrared camera during the night. And then toward the end of the actual investigation, when we went back to get the camera, as I came up the stairs and announced myself, the IR would remain on, which is a reddish blue type of light. It's definitely recognizable, and you can see it. What ended up happening when we actually viewed the videotape, as I was in the actual room and speaking, kind of thanking them for the time there, you see a black covering go across and then come off, almost as if someone was taking their hand and putting it in front of the actual lens.
Like that trail camera.
Like the trail
Yes.
camera, absolutely. So that was very interesting that you showed that, because that's pretty much what you will
Excellent.
see is a darkness that occurs.
Excellent, thank you. One more question, yes.
Have you ever been to Horton Hospital? I hear that's haunted, or
Horton-
any other hospital?
Horton Hospital.
Yeah, the old building on Prospect Avenue.
Yes,
in the
I'm not to investigate, I have to
Okay.
say. But yes, hospitals, the stories I've heard from nurses and doctors, obviously any functioning facility does not want stories of ghosts, but I get more stories that I can't use about hospitals, because obviously that's where most people pass away. So, but yeah, if you can get me into Horton or know somebody.
Go to the old OR.
The old OR.
Horton Hospital. There's a girl that walks around, about 12 or 14 walks around there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the security guard won't go there.
Well, again, thank you all for coming out.
Just a couple of last comments, folks. First of all, we've been making a video record of Linda's presentation, and I'll be looking very closely at it later to see if we have any images.
We brought somebody with us.
Secondly, if you haven't yet, Linda has a table full of books over here. Please take a look at that. It looks like we've got a few lunch kits left on the table if anybody's still hungry on the way out. And if you'd like to, there's a jug there that you can contribute to help us put these programs on in the future. Thanks very much. John? He's on that table, yes.